Why, hello there. Brent here with BYOTools. On today's episode, if you want to learn how we built these magnetized shelves, keep on watching. Let's get started. This project all started with the fact that we have all these holiday cards, but they're strewed about on our windowsill and it just does not look good. I'm sure a few people have this problem and I wanted to dress it up. So I figured, let's dress up this space. This is a bar card I made, and as you can see, we have all this space right here, and I wanted to do something on this space that presented them in a much cleaner fashion. So we got to do it BYOT style. Let's get to it. So the basis of this project is super simple. All we're using is a leftover piece of walnut that I had from a previous project. I'm going to be slicing it into smaller, manageable chunks, and that's going to be the basis of our shelf. So let's start cutting. The first thing we have to do, of course, is cut down our lumber, and I'm cutting approximately 1 1/8 inch thick strips because our magnets are approximately 1 inch in diameter. I then proceed to cutting the ends off with my chop saw, and the length of these strips are 24 inches long. Now the real key to this piece is the fact that I want a perfect nice little channel down the top side of the shelf in order for pictures to easily fit in place and stay in place permanently. This channel is 1/4 inch deep as well as 1/4 inch from the front edge, and I do this to every single shelf and then proceed to giving it a little bit more of a flare. I actually set up my table saw blade at a 45-degree angle and cut the front bottom lip for 2 reasons. One, it's because it actually gives it a little more style and flair, which I like, and 2, it actually reduces the overall weight of these shelves. And in all honesty, I've never done this before, so I don't know how much these shelves will be able to hold, and the lighter the shelf, the better. At this point in time, we have our shelves cut up at the right dimensions. Now, let's go ahead and start drilling. This is the back side of each one of these boards, and I'm actually going to be using a paddle bit in order to cut a perfect 1 inch diameter hole for our magnets. You don't have to do this step because you can obviously just glue the magnet straight to the back side of the board, but I do want these shelves as nice and as flush against the wall as possible, and therefore I want to recess these magnets into the back side of the shelf. Now I was cutting this fairly close because these boards are only 1 1/8 inch wide, and if you want to give yourself a little bit more room, go ahead and just bump it up to 1 1/4, which gives you plenty of space. As for the magnets, we are using these perfectly round disc magnets that are extremely strong, and I picked them up on Amazon. I'll make sure and leave a link in the description box below if you want to find these magnets. As for adhering them in place, I'm just taking some Starbond CA glue, applying that to the wood, and then pushing the magnet into the hole and holding it for a few seconds. If you feel like you want to accelerate the process, just get some accelerator spray and spray that on the back side of the magnet first, and then press it into the shelf. It will literally provide a permanent bond within seconds, which is very nice. Because I didn't provide myself much wiggle room, there were a couple sections where I actually cut through the top or bottom edge, but luckily all I needed to do here is apply some black CA glue, let it harden up, and then sand it smooth afterwards. I decided to strap down my sander and then sand these boards because it actually made it a lot easier to sand all these different sides at one time. I actually did this in a recent BYOT project, and I would highly recommend this process if you have small pieces that you're working with. Now the only thing that I would have changed differently on this process is that I actually installed the magnets after I sanded. Yeah, it wasn't too smart of me to try and sand my boards while also trying to avoid sanding magnets. Yeah, keep that in mind and try and install the magnets after you sand. After you're done sanding, I then take a tack cloth and remove all the excess materials left on these boards. This is just a nice way to have a clean, buttery smooth finish in the end. And as for finish, we are using Armasil Satin Finish by General Finishes. This is one of my all-time favorite finishes, especially on walnut. I'm applying it with a clean foam brush, which really makes the application process very easy for finishing off these shelves. Now the nice thing about this finish is that once you apply it, all you have to do is let it dry for approximately 5 minutes and then wipe off the excess. Once you wipe off the excess, go ahead and let the wood dry for a couple hours and then apply a second coat. Do the same process, and after the shelves are dry, guess what? We're done with the shelves. Now, let's get to the wall. Now there are of course a number of different ways to lay out these shelves, but preferably I first start by finding my center point on the wall and then proceed to figuring out where the OC mark is for the magnets. And no, OC does not stand for the early 2000s TV show. It means the on-center mark, which is the direct center of the item that you're measuring to, which in our case, the magnets. With the help of my laser line along with my 1-inch long paddle bit that we used previously, I'm easily able to pinpoint exactly where each magnet needs to go into the wall. Now these disc magnets are extremely thin, and all I have to do is drill to a depth of 1/8 to 1/4 inch. Based on picture sizes, I space these out every 8.5 inches. Then after I have my holes drilled, I'm able to apply a bit of 60-second adhesive, stick the magnet in place, and then move on to the next one. On a side note, the real reason why I wanted to use magnets is not only is it something that's different, is the fact that it's going to be something that's more seasonal based, so I want to have an easy way to install shelves as well as remove shelves that don't leave any marks afterwards. That's something that is really nice about this whole system, which works out perfectly in the end. As for filling these holes, I use a standard Drydex by DAP, and the really nice thing about this product is that it actually turns a different color when it's fully dried. It's pink at first, but guess what? It has a built-in indicator which turns white once it's completely dry. Oh, and as a side note, use a plastic spreader when trying to apply this. Yeah, a metal putty knife really does not do the trick because the magnet is actually grabbing it and pushing it into the putty, which is screwing up the finish, so I did learn that pretty quickly. Oh, and if you're like me and you don't like to wait around for drying time, go ahead and take your heat gun and actually blast this putty, and therefore within seconds, it's almost completely dry. Once the putty is dry enough to sand, I then take my sander with 300 grit sandpaper and just sand away the excess putty. Now you can obviously use just a sanding block, but I like to avoid dust at all costs, and so all I have to do is hook up my sander to my shop vac, and guess what? Hardly any dust is created. I would also highly suggest applying some wall texture before painting, because that way you completely conceal these fasteners, and therefore once this wall is painted, you don't even see the fact that you have a fully functional magnet shelf system built in. The texture I'm using actually dries in 5 minutes, and therefore once it's fully dried, you're ready to prime. And I would highly suggest priming before your final wall color, because you'll have a more even, consistent color over the entire span of your wall. Once you've applied your prime coat, go ahead and start applying your paint, and guess what? After that's dry, we are done. Full credit on this one goes to my sister, because she suggested I should make some shelves for all of these crazy holiday cards. Well, I did, but I had to make it BYOT style, of course, right? And as you can see, it turned out absolutely beautiful, and I love the look, the easeability, and the fact that you can remove these anytime you want and have a perfectly crisp wall all the way down. That's amazing, and truly one beautiful, sexy beast. Oh yeah.